Go.
Oh. You are what you eat, as the old adage goes. And if this is true, perhaps we should take a closer look at what it is we put in our mouths. Today, I'm going to talk to you about MSG. Now, I'm sure all of you have either eaten in Chinese foods, restaurants, Japanese restaurants, or perhaps in high school, you ate school lunch. Either way, one thing is certain. You have all eaten MSG. I have learned a lot about MSG through medical research. Last summer, my doctor recommended that I restrict my intake of MSG. But we'll learn more info on that for my persuasive speech. For now, let's just talk about the history, purpose, and presence of MSG. We'll start by looking at the history of MSG. MSG has a history dating clear back to the 1800s. In about that time, the Japanese used seaweed as a flavor enhancer. They didn't know that it was actually the glutamate acid that was in the seaweed that was causing this flavor-inducing wonderfulness. And then in 1908, they began to extract glutamic acid from the seaweed. And that created the first monosodium glutamate. And it wasn't until after World War II that monosodium glutamate became known in the U.S. In 1956, the U.S. started to use fermentation as a process to grow bacteria that excretes MSG. And glutamic acid is just another term for MSG. And only 1 year later, 1957, large-scale amounts of MSG began to be created. And then only 1 year after that, in 1958, the FDA enacted the Food Additives Amendments. And this stated that, and I quote from the amendment, they needed to give proof of reasonable certainty that no harm will result from the proposed use of an additive. Great.
Sorry. Do you want me to start over?
No, it's cool. So it was already before that time that MSG had been widely used, and so it was already accepted and adapted to be relatively harmless. And so it has never been tested by the FDA. And because of this, the use of MSG has grown and grown over the last 30 years and still continues to grow. Now that we know a little bit more about the history of MSG, let's figure out why it is we use this, the purpose. MSG's one purpose is simple. It is used as a flavor enhancer. It is said to create a fifth taste known as umami by the Japanese, and that basically is just a savory flavor. The other tastes are sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy. And you can find this in Baylock's Health and Nutrition Secrets to help your diet. Some scientists believe that this fifth taste is created just by enacting all four of the other tastes, but others say it's a taste all its own. And this savory taste is very similar to the taste that you get when eating ripe cheese or tomatoes. Yum. Now that we know why we use this delicious and delectable enhancer, let's figure out where we can find it. MSG can be found in many processed foods, such as Chinese food, Japanese food, soups, chips, more soups, McDonald's, Stovetop, Hamburger Helper, and much more. Many boxed foods contain it. Most foods contain it, actually, that are salty these days. It can be found in dairy products, medicines, and don't forget, pesticides and fertilizers. MSG also has a number of aliases, and so if you don't see MSG in the nutrition facts, don't be fooled. The product still can contain it. Many names of MSG can be glutamic acid, monopotassium glutamate, hydrolyzed protein, soy protein, and that's just to name a few. And you can find more of these names in George Schwartz's In Bad Taste. As you can see, there is much about MSG that most people do not know about. MSG has a long history and is becoming more and more prevalent in our diets due to its tasty appeal. You are what you eat, as the old adage goes. And now, you know a little bit more about who you are.